The Dirty Air Fest All-Star race just got announced today, and oh boy, it is an interesting one. We've got a few things to go over today, from the All-Star race to some reactions to Carson Hocevar and Austin Hill on his comments against Ross Chastain. But we're going to start off with the All-Star race because, boy, I'll tell you what, NASCAR has done a lot of things this year that I've been a fan of bringing back the chase format, increasing the horsepower, all great things. And as well, the marketing of the sport's been awesome. But I'll tell you what, this All-Star format is the complete opposite. It is, I don't know what in the world we're doing here, but it starts off right off the bat. There's the first issue of the All-Star race. Well, we've gotten rid of the All-Star Open, so now we are just going to have everybody on the track at the same time racing for a spot in the All-Star race. Now, isn't the All-Star race about the best of the best? I don't know. It seems kind of weird how that works, including, Cody Ware, is going to be racing amongst the All-Stars, for this, getting into this event. Now, I guess it's kind of the same thing as bringing in the Open and just combining the Open with the All-Star event in itself and the actual main race. So I'm not like fully against it, but it just seems like a weird choice to me. Now, the format is really strange as well. We have these first two segments, and you have segment one, which is 75 laps. And then after the first segment, the top 26 finishers all get inverted. So whoever finishes first will start 26th, second would start 25th, and then of course 26th would be first, 25th would be second, so on and so forth for the second segment, which is also 75 laps. Now, I don't even know how to understand and comprehend this because I'm an idiot, so I need to actually go and look at this. So 27th on down for segment 2 lines up by the finish of segment 1, and then the lowest combined finishing position from both segments set the starting lineup for the final segment. So whoever has the best average finish basically after the first two segments make it into the final segment, and then it's just 26 drivers that are in the final segment racing for 200 laps and $1 million. It then says the remaining drivers are based off of their finishing position in the first and second segment, so I guess that's like the 27th and down drivers or something like that. It's really weird. I mean, I'm sure it'll be easy to understand when the race actually happens, but just off the top of my head, I'm like, oh my god, what are we doing? And then on top of that, this is a 350 lap race. Dover, a points race, is usually 400 laps. We're only doing 50 less laps. We're gonna be having a 3.5 hour all-star race just about if we have a bunch of crashes. However, I don't really see that happening at Dover, because another problem with Dover is it in the next gen car has turned into a bit of a dirty air fest, and I'm hopeful that Goodyear is going to bring a good tire, because if they don't, this is going to be the most boring all-star race we've ever had. It's in the middle of the day. That already takes a lot of the aura of the all-star event away, and then we might not even be able to pass. I just wish we could go back to Charlotte all-star race, especially with this package. And well, I take that back now, because we now have 2 Charlotte Oval races since we did the get rid of the Roval thing because we're scared to turn right. So I don't want a third race at the Charlotte Oval at this point. But as well, yeah, it's just really weird to me that we're doing 350 laps for an all-star race. I mean, who in the world? I expect for an all-star race event, I show up, it's maybe a 2-hour event at tops. Now we're talking 3+ hours potentially again for the all-star race. It just feels like it's really unnecessary to really lengthen the race to the length it is. Maybe it's the fact that they are adding so many laps, a 200 lap final segment, maybe because of the fact they know it's going to be really hard to pass, so they want a long run maybe to build up, and maybe some tire wear start to have an effect, so that way at least it's a little bit interesting is kind of my expectation of what they're hoping for. Also, the pit crew challenge has not been changed from last year. It's during qualifying, and basically whoever has the best time in qualifying with the pit crew wins the challenge, basically. I really wish we could get back to 15 years ago where we had it was in the building and they had the pit stops head to head with two teams against each other, and then they would have to push the car down the little pit lane to the start finish line, and that was who won, and they would move on to the next round in that bracket style tournament. That was really fun. That was in literally the first couple of years I watched NASCAR, and then it was gone, and I really, really missed that. And as well, I really missed when we could full send it down pit lane. Obviously, you can't do that at a Dover or previously North Wilkesboro, but I really miss when the All-Star Race was cool, and as well when they use the All-Star Race as an experiment for trying to make the racing product better. We've seen them use Charlotte many times as an experiment to make the cars better, but now we're not doing that either. At Wilkesboro, we're not really doing it. We didn't do it there. We are not doing it here in Dover, it seems like, unless they have something they're not announcing yet. So that's really annoying as well, because I feel like the Clash and the All-Star Race should both be opportunities to test something out to make our on-track product as best as possible, instead of leave it to a test with 10 cars in the off-season. The Joe Gibbs versus Chris Gabehart saga has continued, and they've now brought Spire into the situation as well as basically a defendant alongside Chris Gabehart. And yeah, they're suing for quite a bit. They're like $8 million in damages. But what I found interesting was they have now filed a restraining order against Chris Gabehart. And on top of that, basically in simple terms as well, an order for him to not be able to work for 18 months in his role with Spire. And man, I find that crazy. Of course, this is all over a bunch of stuff regarding files and folders they found on his work laptop or whatever, and of course stealing some very secret data and trade secrets, basically setup data potentially as well, stuff like that, and some big important stuff. And well, now they're saying, yeah, you can't work. I find that crazy that you're gonna sue a guy for millions of dollars and then tell him he can't make a living. That's a bit wild to me. That's certainly a choice, but as far as I'll go on that. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out regardless. I'm sure we're going to find out a lot of more information as these weeks and months progress. I don't know how long it's going to take for them to go to trial. My guess would be the off season. Who knows? But it's going to certainly be interesting to watch regardless. Also, is it just me, or I feel like every time there's some team drama, Spire always seems to be involved, and I don't understand why. And they're always on the bad side of the drama, not we're the good guys side. So I never quite understood that. Speaking of Spire, let's stick with Carson Hocevar. He, of course, made the rounds this weekend in Atlanta, went bulldoze mode, and there was some responses from a few drivers with podcasts, including Denny Hamlin as well as Kevin Harvick. Denny Hamlin, of course, actually, we'll just take a listen on what he had to say.
I keep hearing, well, he's going for it. So if I'm 3 car lengths behind Carson Hocevar and I go through the grass into turn 1 and then wipe him out, is that just me going for it, or is that me being an idiot?
An idiot.
Okay, so I think we have to stop using it's just going for it.
The way I would approach it is I'd probably wreck him the first chance I got.
That's kind of what I would. That's what I would do.
I would. I mean, if it was when you're trying to get in that position to be able to send a message, you have to show that aggression to send a message. And that was, kind of how I would approach it in the past. I don't think he's doing anything wrong. I think he's racing aggressively, but in this deal, when you put people in bad positions over and over and over, eventually somebody's going to take that method and try to, make sure that they send that message to him that, hey, you can do that to everybody else, but don't do me. So it'll be interesting to see who does that first.
I was about to say,
none of them really holding back, and personally, it comes down to what you prefer out of a race car driver. But from my preferences, I fully agree with them. We have, of course, seeing drivers already kind of take care of business last year with Carson at times. You think back to Josh Berry full-blown dumping him in Sonoma, Zane Smith using him up in Bristol when they were racing for the win, and Carson didn't make the playoffs, but all throughout the playoffs was getting ran over by some people who were not cutting him any more breaks. So Kevin Harvick, of course, he's when he says he'd wreck someone, he means it. I mean, we saw the whole deal with Chase Elliott back in 2021, I think it was, right? 2021, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I mean, you have to agree with these guys personally, and Denny Hamlin as well, talking about, well, how cutting through the grass and wrecking him, for example, would that just be him going for it? Because that seems to be the excuse that we've been using as of late for that 77. Now let's stick on track with the 77 and this paint scheme they're running for Circuit of the Americas this weekend. Actually think this is a very interesting car. It's it's got some kind of flares of Dale Earnhardt's Good Wrench number 3. Coincidence, I don't know, but it's kind of funny how he's using that. Of course, it's got a stripe on the front bumper, on the hood, I should say. But outside of that, there's definitely some Earnhardt Good Wrench tendencies on this car, and I think it's kind of funny. And I'm curious to see how Carson's going to do in the Intimidator paint scheme. So it'll be interesting to watch him on track. And he's running this weekend, this paint scheme in Circuit of the Americas. And finally, Austin Hill. Today's episode, we're going to finish things off with him. Well, first of all, he's making his 2026 Cup debut this weekend in Phoenix for RCR's number 33 car. We'll see how he does there. But the main talk was my man in the O'Reilly race. He threw this horrific block on Ross Chastain. Actually, it wasn't horrific. It really wasn't that bad, but it was still a block. And you should know to not block Ross Chastain. I wish, personally, I'm not a huge fan of Ross Chastain's driving half the time, but this is one of the characteristics I do like about Ross Chastain, is when someone blocks him, he doesn't lift, because at the end of the day, you're the one responsible if you're going to throw a block for what happens next. And Austin Hill threw the block on Chastain. Chastain does not lift, gets himself wrecked, and he has the audacity after the race to blame Ross Chastain.
When Ross is behind you, I expect to get put firewall deep in the wall. I mean, that's just the things that he does. So, unfortunate.
My man. Of all, I mean, I don't expect anything less from Austin Hill, but come on now, just take a little bit of responsibility. You threw the block. You're another driver. If people block you, you don't lift. So for you to say that is just outrageous. You threw the block and got yourself wrecked. Dale Jr. had a great quote, I think it was last year, and it was, "You block, you pay." And I fully agree with that, and I wish that more drivers were like Ross Chastain. Chastain, if you block him, he's not lifting, but then I've also seen Ross Chastain throw some of the worst blocks in Cup Series history, so it goes both ways, right? You at times have to throw the block, but I beg drivers, stop lifting when someone throws the block. Do what Chastain did, because if they throw the block, it's their responsibility for what happens next. And yeah, the guy behind you absolutely does not have to lift, and Austin Hill found out the hard way and then got out and cried about it, and I thought that was funny. Remember last year when you right hooked Eric Almirola and somehow it wasn't your fault, and you wiped out a bunch of cars in Watkins Glen? That wasn't your fault either. So clearly he does not take any responsibility for anything that he does on the racetrack. That's it for me, though, in the kind of weekly roundup we've got heading into Circuit of the Americas this weekend. A bit of a quiet week. There was really not a lot of drama going on. But yeah, I'm looking forward to turning right again at Circuit of the Americas. SVG is going to be strong, but I don't think is going to be as strong as you think, because he's actually got a pretty rough track record at COTA, because when supercars raced there, even back in the mid-2010s, they raced there for 1 year, I think 2013. I think his best finish there was only 5th in like the 3 or 4 races they did. So SVG and COTA don't always mix. Now, of course, back in the Xfinity series a few years ago, he was going to win until, ironically, Austin Hill decided he was going to be a clown. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think that the field stands a bit more of a chance against SVG at COTA versus the other 3 road courses coming up later this season. That's going to do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to spend a few minutes right here on the Going channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.